You recently announced your 2011 full year results. How would you sum up the main highlights?
Well, I'm very pleased with the results we reported for 2011. Profit before tax was up by 12% and earnings per share up by 14%. Now, for me, there were two key things that underpin the delivery of those results. Firstly, impairments have been very good and are on an improving trend in both businesses. And secondly, we've seen very strong growth from Vanquis. And overall in the round, obviously we've been able to increase the dividend by 8.7% for the full year to 69p, so I'm very pleased with the results.
The 8.7% increase in the dividend you mentioned, that sounds pretty impressive.
It is a good increase in the dividend, and I guess if you go back to the time of the demerger of IPF in 2007, what we said was we'd look to maintain the dividend at least 63.5 pence per share until we rebuilt the cover to 1.25 times earnings. That's consistent with a gearing ratio of 3.5 times. We were on the cusp of that in 2010, and obviously in 2011 we've come through those targets, so we were able to increase the interim dividend at the halfway mark by 5%, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to increase the full year dividend by 11%, bringing the dividend for a year as a whole to 69p. That's at a cover level of 1.3 times, so a little bit above our target, but very happy with the healthy increase we've been able to give to shareholders. Also, capital generation has been very strong. We generated £110 million of capital during the year, and obviously the balance sheet's in very good shape as well.
As you've said before, life continues to be tough for your home credit customers. So what's been your approach?
Well, we've had a very cautious approach to lending now for the last 3 years, and that's meant focusing very much on collecting well and on repeat business and dialing back a little bit on new business. We've dialed back a little bit more during 2011, so that we're now turning away about 4 out of 5 applications. Inflation's really been the key issue for our customers in terms of the food bill and the energy bills rising. And so customers' disposable incomes have been under some pressure, and we've responded to that by very much focusing on collecting well and on repeat business. We've also made a few changes to the way we pay our agents, and those have also had a beneficial effect on our collections performance.
From what we read, it sounds as if inflation is finally beginning to fall, and surely your customers must be seeing some benefit from that.
Well, I think it's right to say that there is a slowdown in the rate of inflation, which is good news, though you have to remember we're talking here about a moderation in the rate of increase of household bills rather than those bills starting to fall. Now, even though perhaps some energy bills have started to fall a little bit, they're still a lot higher than they were in 2009. I think it's fair to say that some commodities, particularly food and petrol and diesel, are still rising. The thing to remember about inflation is that it's really a dampener on growth. It means that loan ticket sizes can't rise because repayments need to remain affordable, and it also tends to dent consumer confidence. Now, as inflation starts to moderate and customers' incomes start to recover, we'd expect that confidence to come back and demand for home credit to pick up.
You reported an improvement in impairments in your home credit business, which is in stark contrast to most other lenders. Why is that?
Well, the home credit business has some very strong qualities in terms of impairments. Firstly, the loan ticket sizes are pretty small. Secondly, the duration of the loan book is very short, so we're only looking at a window of exposure somewhere between 6 and 12 months. Thirdly, we have very, very high levels of knowledge of our customers. We call on every customer every week to collect repayments, and most of our business is repeat business. And finally, we pay our agents on what they collect, not on what they lend. So those are huge strengths and make us look quite different to most other lending businesses. Then obviously overlaid on top of that, you've had the very cautious approach to lending that we've had over the last 3 years. And it's the combination of those things that have allowed us to deliver the impairment performance that we did.
Although you saw growth in home credit receivables, customer numbers nevertheless fell by 2% during 2011. So what are you doing to get the growth back?
Well, customer numbers did fall by 2% last year, and that was primarily because we chose to tighten underwriting on new customers. That resulted in around 80,000 additional customers being turned away versus what we would have done in 2010. That represents the difference between 2% growth in customers and the 2% contraction that we actually saw. It's important to say there's no shortage of demand from customers. There's plenty of people applying, but we're turning down now about 4 out of 5 of those applications. Also, there are some initiatives that we have running this year in order to get a little bit more growth into the business.
So what are those initiatives?
Well, firstly, we've been having a good look at the agency force, and what we've been doing is consolidating some of those smaller rounds into larger agencies which tend to be more profitable and more sustainable. So the number of agents the company has fallen to around 10,500, but those agencies represent more capacity and more working hours available, and they tend to be more profitable and more sustainable, and experienced, motivated agents who work for us full-time tend to produce very, very good results. The second thing we're doing is we're having a very good look at the footprint of the business across the UK. Now, as you know, we work out of branch locations, and we've identified some secondary towns where we don't currently have a branch, and those towns are managed from a nearby larger town as a satellite. And what we did last year was we opened new branches in around half a dozen of those towns with a view to getting some more growth, and we'll probably do some more of those new branch openings during 2012.
Turning to Vanquis Bank, your credit card business, you reported profits up by 2/3 at a time when most other credit card companies are really struggling. So what are you doing differently?
Well, Vanquis did have a terrific year. We reported profits of £44 million. And I guess if you look at Vanquis, you'll see it's quite different to most of the credit card issuers. Vanquis is the only card issuer that has focused purely on the non-standard market and developed its business model specifically to serve those customers. Now, at the heart of that is what we call our low and growth strategy to credit. So for the customers we accept, and that's typically only around 1 out of 5, we offer a low credit line, often £250, and that credit line is slowly extended as a customer builds up a history with us and a relationship with us. So that the credit line across the portfolio is currently averaging around £900, but that's a lot lower than you'd see in a typical mainstream credit card business. We also have a much greater level of customer contact than most credit card issuers. Firstly, we speak to every customer on the phone at the point of underwriting in order to complete the application process. Thereafter, we have a much more intensive dialogue with our customers. They tend to phone us more often, and we use other tools such as SMS text messaging to remind them when they need to pay.
So who is a typical Vanquis customer, and how do they come to you?
A typical Vanquis customer is going to be in regular employment, probably paid monthly into their bank account. They probably earn between £15,000 and £30,000 a year, and they probably live in rented accommodation rather than being homeowners. Now, they're coming to us because they've probably been turned down for credit elsewhere, and that could be because they've had problems in the past but are over them, or maybe they've just got what we call a thin credit file. Perhaps they've moved address frequently and have an incomplete credit record. Now, in terms of how they find us, over half our new business now comes to us through the internet, through the usual price comparison sites and other sources. About a third of our business comes through direct mail programs that we run, and the remainder comes through referrals from third parties.
Vanquis now has around 700,000 customers. So how big could this business get?
Well, Vanquis is certainly operating in an underserved market. Now, it's hard to put hard and fast targets around size because growth will depend on the economic environment and on competition and so on. But if we look at what we did last year, we recruited just short of 300,000 new customers. We had a net growth in customers of about 150,000. So I think we can see potential for this business to get to somewhere between 1 million and 1.2 million customers over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. Now, in terms of average balance, it's currently in the low 600s, but over time, as the new customers become a smaller part of a larger book, you'd expect the average balance to rise up to somewhere between £800 and £1,000. Now, with 1 to 1.2 million customers, that means we're looking at a loan book of around £1 billion of receivables in due course. That's the same size, if not larger, than the home credit business.
You talk about your business plan at Vanquis assuming some adverse impact from a possible rise in unemployment, but at the moment, impairments are at an all-time low.
Impairments in Vanquis are at the lowest level since we started the business. If you think about Vanquis customers being in regular work, Vanquis is more exposed to changes in the conventional employment market. And we built our plans for 2012 around the assumption that unemployment in the economy goes up to 3 million. And so we may see some modest increase in the level of arrears in the business. Now, to put that into context, arrears are at an all-time low. So we're talking about the level of impairments in the business potentially rising from that all-time low up a little bit to something that's still well below target. Now, I have to say, there's no evidence of this so far, and in fact I'm encouraged by the fact that we've seen unemployment reasonably stable over the last few months.
Vanquis Bank started to take retail deposits in 2011, and recently you said that you'd raised £200 million since last July. You must be very pleased by the way this has gone, and how much more do you intend to take in?
Yes, we have been very pleased by the launch of retail deposits. It's gone very smoothly. If you look at what we've done, we've built a book with an average maturity of around 2 years, and the all-in cost of retail deposits is running just a little bit over 5%. The plan for 2012 is to build up the deposit book towards 80% of receivables. That's the target we have set for funding for Vanquis. That relies on us being in the best buy tables, not necessarily at the top, but near the top. And what we've seen is when you offer rates that are right up there, then the money comes in quite quickly. In 1 week alone, in September of last year, we brought in £30 million.
You recently renewed your core banking facilities.
Yes, we have. We completed those in February of this year, and we're now in a position whereby our bank facilities go out for another 3 years, in fact to May 2015. And that renewal was done on very similar terms to the facilities that we had in place previously, both in terms of covenants and in terms of pricing. So that leaves the group in a great place. We now have sufficient funding when combined with the deposit programme in Vanquis to deal with all the planned growth and all the maturities that we have for the next 3 years.
How would you sum up the outlook for Provident in 2012?
Well, the first thing is we start 2012 with the loan books in both businesses in very good shape. Asset quality is very strong. The outlook for the economy, though, is uncertain, so we've got no plans to change the cautious stance that we've had on credit for the foreseeable future. Things will stay tight in terms of lending standards in both our businesses. The balance sheet's in very good shape. Obviously, we've got funding in place now that takes us out 3 years, and I'm pleased to say that in the first 2 months of the year, collections in home credit have been better than last year's, and Vanquis continues to trade with very, very good momentum. And overall, that leaves me confident of making good progress in 2012.